Greetings and salutations, all you truly stunned individuals. It is another FPL League Unlock. Eric and Marky with you guys for a little week res. That's 3 of global power rankings. Things starting to settle. Just kidding, not really. Things are not going to settle, I don't think, at all in this regular season because, as we've said many times, the meat of the sandwich in most of the major regions are a bit messy.
I'll be honest, I didn't really look ahead all that much, but what I thought at the beginning of the year was, okay, the first split is going to be where it's wonky, where you have to balance all the different scheduling and formatting between the regions, and it's going to be so short before we get to first stand. This split before MSI seems to be the one more so, I think, where there is trouble as far as the global scene and how you manage who has played as many times, who you've played against, all sorts of things like that. You've got whatever EWC qualifiers going on in the background in the middle of the week. You've got so much happening here in all these different regions at different times. It is going to lead to this type of volatility in a power ranking like this from week to week.
The most consistent or thing I'm the most confident in is, well, our VIP lounge right now feels like it's kicked out a member because there's really only 4 teams that I'm letting in that front door. It's excavated from the 5, and that is 2 LCK squads and 2 LPL ones. We're talking BLG, KT Rolster, Top Esports, and Hanwha Life. I think, again, as is tradition, you could probably argue the order here, despite dropping their first match of Split 2 to Top Esports. BLG still has done enough to warrant that number 1 spot, and they bounced back with back-to-back series of wins over the weekend. And most importantly, we saw Viper actually show up and carry a game, Mark. Carry a series, really.
Yeah, and that is a big difference for this BLG squad. I like you talking about our VIP area losing 1 member in this regard. I think that's one of those ones where one of the booths in the club has been put on the caution tape. You know, someone spilled too many drinks.
Under renovation.
Yeah, they're waiting for a new tenant to come on into the club for that type of spot. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yes, it is BLG really holding on to a spot in this top 4, in this club area. And again, as we mentioned, getting a little bit of a boost because we do see Viper's performance more so to his namesake and what he has set as the standard for him in his career. Getting that type of performance, getting that type of carry throughout a series, that is a big time boost and one of those things that you want to keep track of when you're looking at the power level of a BLG at near the top of the power rankings.
And that's not to say you don't feel pretty damn good again about the other 3 squads on this list. Obviously, KT Rolster still sitting pretty with only 2 game losses total to their name. Top Esports have hit this ground running in this split, and again, the only squad to take down Billy. And even HLE at 4, I know people, I would accept putting them ahead of Top Esports. I'm kind of weighing that BLG series pretty highly. But Hanwha Life, even though, they were tested by Nongshim this week, they were absolutely pushed. And we've had either MVP level Kanavi or absolute sludge Kanavi on the Rift. But maybe the most consistent part, which is crazy to say about Hanwha, is Zeka. He is right there with BDD and Chovy as the elite 3 mid laners right now in the LCK so far.
And it's one of the exciting things for Hanwha Life where, again, these are the type of X-factor, unpredictable things that you can't necessarily write down on paper before a series, that if it comes through, if it is a factor within there, and Zeka is that type of player, this is a Hanwha Life that can achieve different type of heights, and that is a different type of threat out on Summoner's Rift that you have to consider, and we've seen that throughout these series, as you've mentioned out, and I think, even going through the ups and downs of Kanavi and some of these performances, maybe not the best overall on the day against Nongshim, I'm going to give him credit because you know what? Sometimes you're playing Nocturne and you guys are tentative on that champion, which is anything but what you want to do. I don't care about the 7 deaths. You knew as soon as he's turning off the lights, he's arriving. He's going to be there going in on that Nocturne. And thankfully, I think for him, the rest of Hanwha Life is able to execute around that in this game and close it out in the series. But yes, this is a Hanwha Life that has answered a lot of the questions, a lot of the criticisms put towards them in the first split, and really come out of the gates in this second split and taking care of the business that you could have asked them to take care of.
And, Zeka has been consistent, and we just highlighted Viper on BLG. We also got to see Guma on the Zaya, and, he had a great performance. But more importantly for me, you finally saw HLE play around him. It felt like so many times in these fights, it was like Guma getting dove in the back line and nobody was there looking for him. He doesn't have his pal Kyria anymore, but we saw a comp that was like, oh no, Guma's the fed one. Let's actually play around him and make sure. And Delight had one insane Lulu ulti that interrupted Scout mid Akali to try and kill Guma. So HLE showing that they can play around all three of their lanes, which was kind of the point when you saw this roster.
Yeah, and that is, again, one of the significant developments as far as what you can fear heading into a matchup against Hanwha Life. Heading into the year, yeah, it was instantly the on paper, Zeus in the top side. You had to worry about what type of Kanavi you were going to get, and of course, Guma bringing in the pedigree from T1. But finally being able to really utilize it, showing that type of threat on Summoner's Rift from all those angles, that has been why Hanwha Life has seemed so much stronger this split.
When you move beyond that VIP area, as we open up this board, it's kind of a trio of hibernating giants within the LCK, and still surprisingly at the head of this 3-3 train in Korea is D plus Kia. They get the series win against T1. They now have the head-to-head against both Gen G and T1, and one of only two teams to actually take a game off of KT Rolster.
Yeah, it's got to count for something. Yes, though, it is balanced by some of the missteps, some of the losses that we have seen from this D plus Kia squad.
Why they're not in the VIP lounge, despite being number 5,
Yeah, but it still has been strong enough. And as you said, having those tiebreaker, head-to-head wins against Gen G and T1 in that regard early is that type of advantage that is going to count for something down the line in the LCK. And it's absolutely one of these ones where it sets up D plus Kia that if you are legit, can you bring yourself out of kind of this middle funk that you're in a little bit right now and rise back up to that elite level, VIP club type of situation? You absolutely are taking one of those spots in the top group of the LCK away from either of Gen G and T1 in that type of situation. That is absolutely a big gain for a squad like D plus Kia that I think, again, heading into this year with Smash in the bottom lane and hoping for more improvements, in the top side and in the jungle as well from some young guys, you have seen that development, and you have seen that there is something here that might be at that top level in the LCK, but now I think this is really where you got to dig deep and are going to be challenged to prove that this time around in more of the meat section here as we get through the LCK split too.
And because we've, I think, seen, the power level really be compressed in the LCK, it's still a high level, but there's not this Gen G war machine dominating everybody at the top. I know KT is 7-0, but it's still not quite the fear that Gen G has instilled on other teams over the last couple of years. So you feel like it's really not going to be sorted out until playoffs do roll around, or I guess it's not even playoffs. The road to MSI, which is basically this old King of the Hill format, which is a lot less forgiving than the actual current playoff double elim bracket.
It's one of those situations where you kind of look at everybody else ahead of Gen G and T1 in that regard, and you're evaluating, the confidence, the full power that you feel with them. It's not exactly the same as when Gen G is that automatic winner on the day. T1, when they're in their ultimate form and have the meta read and everything else like that. It isn't quite there yet, but that's one of those things where, again, is part of the special sauce that makes it those championship teams when you're looking at Gen G, like a T1, and when they can get in that type of form. So it's, again, never one of these situations where you want to write them off. And certainly what you have seen from them so far this split has been a little bit of that mixed bag, but it's not been enough of the negative that you would write off either of these squads from being able to get back to that top tier.
And sandwiched in between T1 and some of these other LCK squads, we highlight the top two from EU, and it's still, same as last week, Team Vitality, they get another 2-0. Same with Carbine Corp, who, again, are the victim of the scheduling, that they only have 3 series. I know they're the only team that's beaten Vitality, but we've seen so much more out of Vitality, but it feels like you're just waiting for a few more games to really give KC back that top dog in EU for now title.
Yeah, and it's going to be the real test as we move through these next couple of weeks for a squad like Vitality, because again, you've done everything you could to this point, more or less, and you have achieved a very great deal. And so you get rewarded in this type of position within the power rankings. It's going to be a difficult task within the next 2-3 weeks as that schedule lessens out, as we see you less often, and we're talking about all these other teams playing their games and moving on. Can you maintain this position within the top 10? Can you look strong enough that you are still considered in this type of territory? I think that has to be the challenge that you're looking at with Vitality and with players, of course, like Humanoid and Karzi, who we know have been inconsistent at times in their career, but have been consistently good for Vitality to start out this split.
And this squad, I think, especially Karzi Humanoid, looking to prove again that they're top tier. They seem motivated as ever. But on the opposite side, you've heard guys like Supa talking about Team Vitality. And because they're, vocal, entertaining, I think it automatically puts a target on your back for other squads to want to, how do I put it politely, shut you up, really, is what these other squads are probably looking to do.
And especially because there's just something about Vitality, something about, Humanoid off of Fnatic and, the journey Karzi's been on with his career, that it really feels like this usurper type of moment in the LEC, more so than when KC came in and said, hey, we're one of the top squads. Different when Movistar Koi brings in Jojo Pion and says, no, we're going to be at the top. This is a little bit more of that underdog rival challenger coming through with Vitality and this iteration of it and what they've been able to do. Yeah, I think there is that target on their back. And when you're talking about a squad like KC, they are aiming for it and playing a lot better and getting more contributions, more synergy from that bottom lane duo of Khalees and Busio, and especially from our boy Busio. And that is a big boost for them, and why, again, heading towards their road weekend, I'm very positive and very excited to see what KC is able to do.
Yeah, he's clearly been the best support EU through these first couple of series for KC. Last squad on this top 10 board is Invictus Gaming, which is one of the bigger surprises and really is more, this is a revolving door position. I think there's going to be a lot of teams coming in this, rounding out the top 10, and a lot of teams in the LPL moving, rotating musical chairs for who that third best squad is. But right now, the only, given is that it is a steep drop-off after BLG TES to whoever's next in the LPL right now.
Well, especially, in the LPL and that, notification, but more so just even in the, scheme of this power ranking and the situation, you get to number 10 and it feels like you've climbed a mountain, you're at a plateau, take a little bit of a breather, maybe a swig of water, and then you look up and you go, oh my Lord, there's Mount Everest on top of Mount Everest already that I gotta climb and get towards that. And that's the position between 10 to then 1 in that situation. And again, as you laid out, almost even better where we have BLG at the top of the power ranking, signifying not only the top of the global scale, but the top of the LPL right now, and then having IG at 10, and that type of difference in there and in the results in the product. But that's not meant to take away from what good we have seen from IG so far, and certainly beating out the expectations to be in this position and have this record that they do in the LPL.
Had enough of a pushback for a tough weekend. It was playing straight up BLG and Top Esports head to head. They took a game off BLG and contested Top Esports, even though it ended up being a sweep. So get comfy at the base camp of Everest IG, because I don't think you're going any higher. Set up the cots and get a nice tent and hang there before the actual deadliness begins. We look at the other half of this board, and it's another somewhat surprise squad right behind IG, with who went head-to-head with Hanwha Life today, and Nongshim at 4-3. We've had a resurgent season out of Scout in the mid lane so far.
and certainly one that is, kind of shutting up the haters, the doubters, and there were
Yep.
many of them, us included, during that first split with Nongshim. But he certainly has turned it around and been one of the leading members of this team, and why they find themselves in this type of territory in the LCK, where maybe, yes, you are behind the expected in T1 and Gen G, even though they are behind where they were expected to be in the standings type of situation. But you're not so far behind that you can't pull off a miracle, that you can't make one of these type of runs if you take care of your business. They were close to being able to pulling off, a pretty big upset today, but still one of these ones where I think the strength of this team is that they are going to be a tough competitive out for even this middle tier in the LCK.
Yeah, and if they're like the gatekeepers for playoffs, it's actually pretty formidable gatekeeper to get through in the current form that they're in, because of course they took a game off. HLE had a lead in that third game, so feeling pretty good about Nongshim. And truthfully, this whole 11-20 board, like if you were to play a best of 5 series between most of the squads here, I feel like anybody could beat anybody. You can even throw in, we don't have Lion Gaming on this board, but they'd probably slide in at 21, right behind the still undefeated Team Secret Whales. But like Cloud9 being 12 and Team Liquid 17, like those two are pretty even in power level. So yeah, the 4 to 5 teams in between there, these are basically toss-up matchups you'd have.
I think this is kind of the zone where you have a lot of squads that have shown you enough that you want to throw them into this type of consideration, that you can feel confident about that. But as far as positioning in here to be really solid, really, this is raw, this is it, this is where they are, I don't think anybody has proven that type of thing. When you're talking about this kind of 11-20 rating and where you view these squads, you have seen inconsistencies, you've seen the mistakes from these teams, but you've also seen where they can be strong, where they can capitalize. I think you've seen enough of it from all of them that this is, this type of territory. And as you said, you can envision a lot of these series between, 11 and 17, 12 and 14, whatever, being really competitive, really good series. And I think that's kind of the indication of just that, more or less average power level that it takes right now to get to even consideration on a top 20 power ranking list.
And if you're talking, potential or expectations on this list, I think G2 and MKOI are probably at the forefront for me in terms of expecting them in the coming weeks to be not on this board anymore, and they're climbing towards that top 10 to be in that Vitality and KC kind of conversation.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to see exactly how it'll play out next week around when we're talking about the results of KC's, homestand weekend and how that's going to go with the roadshow. And if they are successful there, that has to pretty much be the blueprint that you want to follow if you are Movistar KOI, because again, that is one of the things that they will have up the pipeline. And of course, G2, their schedule will pick up a little bit more here in these back, last 3 weeks or so of the LEC, and still get more of a chance to prove themselves into an upper tier, I think. So yeah, I think if you're going to identify anybody out of this top 20 that you can make a case that you envision a path to be climbing to maybe take one of those top 10 spots away from someone, I can see the arguments for squads like G2, like Movistar KOI, heck, maybe even throw someone like Na'Vi in there a little bit on the outside, could be one of those possibilities as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Na'Vi gets a little underrated by us and other people as well, because we have that playoff disappointment that happened in Split 1. So kind of need them to prove that they're not just a regular season squad. But listen, no question Rylesh has been a top-tier jungler. And no question that jungle as a whole is the most stacked position in Europe, and the most stacked it's been maybe ever for an individual role.
Well, take for consideration that Kyria recently was talking about, that type of thing and about the international scene and the players, and said, well, outside of the LPL, I think last year, Inspired was probably one of the most skilled, most talented players that we were going up against. Right now, he's picking Skumond as one of those guys that he has seen and has seen really good things from him so far this year. And absolutely, that seems to be the case when you are looking in these positions. I think for me as well, within this top 20, I can look to a squad like Anyone's Legend, getting a good win recently, right? Kind of riding the ship a little bit, and hopefully again can extend off of that if you're looking for them to bounce back more. And even going down to number 20 and talking about Team Secret Wales, as you said, undefeated so far. You keep that up, there's no way you can ignore them climbing up this type of list in the power ranking situation as we move towards our midseason invitational.
Yeah, the LCP, whoever's near the top, it's Team Secret Wales again, as they were in Split 1. Always going to be in the conversation on this board. Back to Anyone's Legend. Yeah, best series they've had so far, the win against NIP. And really, all three of the LPL squads here, I said Koi and G2 should be climbing the top 10. The expectations should be for AL and JDG to not only be more ahead of a squad like NIP, who have shown more positive so far, even though AL just beat them, but I just don't have the full confidence that either of them are going to be ascending there. Tarzan has a great series for AL, but Hope continues to be mega suspect in the bot lane. JDG I'm more confident in, but it's been a slow start.
I need to see probably 2 or 3 great, possibly perfect series from them against their opponents in order to climb up the 5 or 7 positions or so until you're starting to feel like this is more so the territory you are expected to be in as far as one of the top, one of the upper contending teams within the LPL and where you would envision them to be in a global power ranking. It just hasn't been that because of that inconsistency that you have seen from both of these teams. And I think the really slow start, frankly, from Anyone's Legend to this split and maybe the whole year, you could throw that one down as well. But absolutely, the series that they just played was certainly one of those ones that does kind of course correct for them as far as where you might be pushing towards in the LPL. And of course, always an important thing to keep track of when you're looking at that region.
Yeah, and to be fair to Anyone's Legend, they did. Obviously, Tabe left. That was the big off-season news, and they've already on their second head coach for this split. They got a new one coming into Split 2, so obviously a complete change in style of coaching and stuff like that will take some time to ramp up. And again, today was the first signs of positivity in that side. But somebody needs to fill the void of the third and fourth best team in the LPL because it is wide open right now.
I'm tempted to throw the fraud watch label on a squad like NIP right now. I think they've accomplished enough that they deserve their spot where they are, but I'm very cautious about them moving into the next 2 or 3 weeks here, what we're going to see from them.
Right now, I feel like the LPL is more everyone is a fraud until proven innocent, except for Top Esports and Billy. So you got to prove that you can remove the fraud stamp right now. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute stunners. Thanks for hanging out as always. We'll catch you on that flippity flip.